Welcome to Show Studio. We're getting towards sort of the second half of Paris Fashion Week, but we're still sort of really amidst all the really exciting shows that are on at the moment. And today it's Celine, which is the one that kind of, if you look to Paris and you're looking for kind of a big show that's going to change the pace of fashion and get us all thinking for next season, it is Celine and what Phoebe Philo always does there. I've got a big, fabulous set of panellists with me to help unpick what we're seeing in Paris, but also what we're seeing at Celine. But before we begin, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Rosanna.
I'm Rosanna Falconer, and I'm Head of Digital at Matthew Williamson.
I'm Tremaine, Emory. I work at Marc Jacobs.
I'm Katie Barron. I'm a journalist and author, and I'm an editor for the trend forecasting site Stylus.
I'm Karl, Plewka, fashion stylist.
I'm Maarten van der Horst. I'm a designer.
Why is everyone obsessed with Phoebe Philo? Why is she so good?
She's the girl we all want to be.
Yeah.
Certainly for London girls, I think. I can't think of one friend who doesn't think she's pretty damn cool.
I think it's because she kind of epitomises modernity. I know we've talked about that before, but she's almost like that perfect storm of like amazing discipline and quality, but with a bit of a street edge underneath all of that. Compared to some of the kind of heritage brands that can actually feel a bit staid, you always feel like what she's doing is right there, right on the cusp of what's hot, basically.
It's interesting that you talk about heritage brands, because when Maarten and I were on our way here, we were talking a little bit about that at the moment. There's so much kind of talk and buzz around heritage houses being revived, and we're seeing a lot of it, you know, these sort of houses that have been put to bed being sort of doors flung open, reopened. And we talked quite a bit on these panels also about the way in which designers are being brought in to head up those houses, and how it seems like the real ethos now, which is quite different to sort of 20 years or so ago, is that the house is always bigger than the designer. You know, it's always got to be that it's, you know, as we've been saying, Balenciaga, Schiaparelli, rather than it being Wang or Marco Zanini. It's always kind of the house is the biggest thing. And to me, it feels like Celine, it's one of the few examples that we have left, perhaps other than obviously Chanel with Karl Lagerfeld, where the designer is so much bigger than that house. Maybe it's just because the house was going through a bit of a sort of fuddy-duddy time before Miss Philo arrived. But would we agree with that it's almost, you know, just Phoebe Philo that we look at it for? It doesn't really matter that it's Celine.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Plus she just represents modern women. Not every woman, but just modern. You know, like, you can't just pinpoint things that harken back to something else. It's pretty forward, but sensible, you know, like, you know, just sophisticated stuff you could see someone wearing every day. But it's not, like you said, it's not heritage, it's very modern.
Because I guess what I'm asking is, without her, what is Celine? What would we say the codes of Celine are? Would we even be excited about Celine?
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, I think my perception might have more, but isn't it kind of clean? My memory of Celine before Phoebe is the Bicester Village store I used to go sometimes, and there were occasionally good kind of clean separates. Camel colour. Yeah, like sports.
Very
type.
French.
I think the vast majority of people, especially younger consumers, wouldn't have had any memory of Celine before her, actually. I mean, she's such a strong figurehead, and people look at her and they look at her personal style. I mean, I actually think the collections, it's not like they're entirely autobiographical collections, but her and how she looks herself is so tethered to the sales of Celine, I think. You know, she totally epitomises that woman herself. And before that it was kind of floundering, wasn't it? And then all of a sudden, I mean, even LVMH, I mean, they never really give their figures for the separate brands, but they definitely made a comment, you know, I think it was last year or the year before, saying that actually it was Celine that had rocketed them right back up there. So I think everyone's aware that it's, you know, she's the sort of the big transformative power, basically.
It's interesting you say autobiographical, because I remember when I first met Phoebe in the 90s, she was a ragger girl. She had long nails with paintings on them.
There's that amazing pop
mesh
cover
tops,
with her.
and when she was working with, there was that story in the last season collection. You know what I mean? You could say there was the slight past, her own personal past.
Because the last season collection was so exciting for me, because it felt a bit like she'd spent, you know, the first few years basically establishing that actually this is a proper luxury contender, you know, to contend with, you know, even Hermes and Chanel and Vuitton. And then all of a sudden you felt a bit like with the last collection, she was playing with it a little bit, like she'd established it, and now it was time to actually rock it a bit more. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
I also think, actually, you know, that kind of teen customer who lusts after the Celine bags. Like if you look up Celine on Instagram, I mean, first of all, it's difficult because you just get Celine Dion, but really hard to sift through. But it's a load of fake copycat bags or young street style people saying outfit of the day, I love this Celine bag. I actually don't know if they know about Phoebe, and I think they just know about Celine bags because of the likes of unfortunately, I mean not unfortunately, various celebrities wearing them. Yeah.
Where do you stand on Celine, Maarten? As a designer, are you excited by what Phoebe Philo does?
Yeah, I was a very big fan of what she did for Chloe as well. And I thought when she was for Chloe, it was really a Chloe girl that she was dressing. And I think because we don't really have a character connected to Celine, I think it's really quite interesting where she's taking it, because I think she started with this almost German woman, because I thought it was very almost rigid, her fabrics, and I thought last season was really exciting because all of a sudden I saw this French girl again, and there was more flu, asymmetric hems. I don't know, it felt exciting because it was almost I almost saw the Chloe girl again, which I find very much Phoebe Philo.
I think she's so tied to those Chloe years when everyone became so excited by what she was doing. And it was the start of that really iconic thing. Even with talking about the accessories, with the bag she was doing at Chloe, that that sort of green mermaidy dress that's become so iconic from her period there. But I guess it's really hard to pinpoint with a designer. But I want to understand why. What has always made her so successful? Is it because she's zeitgeisty? Is it because she's got a clear vision?
It's good research.
Good research.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research involved in Celine. Like last season, or the season before, the Jeffrey Bean reference with the sleeves. So you can just tell that she works with references and then builds on that. And I also think last season with the prints, you could tell that there was a lot of research referenced. I think also as a woman, as a female designer, to push things forward, and I'm saying a female designer that also could actually wear her own stuff, because she has the body to wear it, which can sometimes be quite limiting, I guess, for women. To push it forward, I think if it's research led, it makes things easier for her team as well to play around and really just push it. Yeah. I don't know.
She even puts her references, doesn't she? If you're at the show, she even gives people actual handfuls of the visual references. She's quite big on that, isn't she?
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I think so. She's quite sort of immersive in the way that she wants to communicate it.
And it's also styling, because I think Celine is one of those labels that have, constant conversations with the stylist. It's not that the clothes come in a week before the show and the stylist has to come in and turn it into strong looks. I think the relationship between her and I think Camilla Nickerson does it. Yeah. You can tell that the accessories are part of the look, and I think it's very much designed as a look. And that I think is the problem, for instance, with Balenciaga this season and previous seasons. It looks like the clothes came in the week before the show and the stylist has to turn it into looks. When Nicola was there with Maria Amélie, you could tell that there were lots of conversations because they were dressing cool women and they looked like proper looks. And I think with Celine, especially the summer season just gone, I think it was so strong because it's not only the bag that you want, it's the dress, it's the prints, it's the shoes, it's all the accessories.
I think there's an age thing as well though. I think, because she's got to be like 41 or something like that, 40, 41, and I actually think that really, whether people know how old she is, it doesn't really matter. I think it helps that she's dressing, there is that autobiographical thing, she's dressing people of that age, which helps with a heritage brand keep that sort of currency and that relevance, and I think that's really important.
It's interesting you say, we talked a bit on these panels about designers growing up over time, and you see that reflected in her work, and quite a lot of people have referenced Stella and saying how her aesthetic has changed so much as she's had more kids, got older. I guess that's quite a unique thing to a female designer though, that they change their aesthetic as they change as a person.
And you can liken that to like a musician, which is great, like how a musician, maybe whatever, they rock or rap, whatever, in their younger years, stuff might be a little wilder, and then as it goes on, gets more mature, or maybe not, it doesn't, but the same thing, you can see that with her, even if you read articles, talked about this in the last panel we did, how, she had the kind of Birkenstocks with like the fur in it, and it looked great, but really she's just like, I just want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Because she's having a baby, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say before that was that the thing I feel about Celine is what separates it from other brands is women who wear Celine, they're separate from other women in the sense that it's about style. It's not even about, because people talk about how obscene the prices are and all that stuff, and you put that to the side. It's just you have to have a certain amount of style to wear Celine, whereas other brands, you kind of tap in because maybe you saw so-and-so wearing it or someone wrote about it, but literally, no matter how much money you have, if you don't have style and confidence and secure, you're not gonna wear Celine,
Yeah.
And that's another thing she does too with like the female body is that's not the focal point of her clothing at all. Is showing off style. It's not about anything about. It's about women showing off their style. Nothing about sexiness. Like it is sexy, but only to a sophisticated person.
Yeah, it's kind of like intelligent
point.
dressing in a way, isn't it? Which is not the same as we've had this conversation about ugly clothes before. But I don't think it's that. It's the intelligence thing.
But we talked a bit, but again, it sounds like Maarten and I had a very exciting cab journey here. But we were also talking about this on the way here, about this idea of, it's not exactly ugliness, but stuff being deliberately difficult or slightly off kilter, which I think is something, when you say intelligent dressing, that's a really good way of putting it, because Celine does that really well, Prada, Marni, that kind of slightly difficult thing. And Maarten was saying that he thinks that, this, and I completely agree, this season we've seen other designers really fall flat from trying to kind of achieve that look, and it just does actually look ugly and it looks ill-fitting. And it's interesting to think that...
Because she lives it. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
She that's the difference, Just like, artists can try to make like, I don't know, act like they're going through a blue period or whatever and make that type of album or that type of art. But if they're not really living it, you're going to see through it. So she really lives it.
I also think it, like as I said before, I think it also has to do with the conversation with the stylist. Because for instance, Marni, it works because Lucinda is always there. There's lots of conversations going on. So I think if you want to do the frumpy, kind of slightly ugly look or something, like with Rochas, the first look at Rochas was just awful because it just didn't work. There were no conversations, there's no character identity that they're dressing. It just seemed really lost. And
it's the characterization, isn't it? It's really understanding who your woman is.
Absolutely.
And Phoebe says she always designs from the gut, from this real gut instinct. And if you're doing that, it's never going to be forced. It's never going to be, this season I'm going to do a move away from minimalism and try prints. It's never as thought out as that.
No, exactly. Like for instance, the Birkenstocks, it was more like, oh my god, we should do Birkenstocks with fur. Because there's this gut feeling.
Exactly.
The entire team is on board and is excited. So it's like, well, why not? Definitely.
And it's also not being afraid to reference things that have existed before. I mean, she referenced Geoffrey Bean in that collection. She also referenced Helmut Lang. And when I first saw that collection, I remember being at the Helmut Lang show with the laundry bag. And I was a bit like, oh my god, this is really close to the bone. But when you talk about her working with Camilla Nickerson and these guys, this would have been, from a time where, that was Helmut Lang was the coolest thing on the planet, and so I think it's fine for people to reference stuff because even if it doesn't seem that long ago to me, but it probably is to a lot of people. It's like you're coming up to 20 years ago. So
it's interesting you talk about referencing, because that's a lot of people have been discussing this season, because we've seen some kind of quite amusing and interesting forms of referencing, especially in London, referencing that was almost completely copying. And I think we're having more and more conversations about what is acceptable referencing from other designers. And I guess it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's that thing where, we're saying it's kind of acceptable when Phoebe does an homage to Helmut Lang, but why is it acceptable when she does it, but then when a London designer?
It's about the context.
Exactly.
It's like the context of the entire collection as well. If you see it and if you see the looks coming after it, you can see that she respects it.
Exactly.
And she treats it with respect and she develops it into her, like it's a completely own story. Like you would never accuse her of that because it seems out of place, and it's not like she's all of a sudden going to do a completely Yohji Yamamoto collection. All of a sudden, I don't know, like it doesn't feel appropriate with her. And having said Yohji Yamamoto, I think there's a lot of Japanese influences, and especially Yohji you see now, which is very, I don't know, not bad. Like it's great, and I think it's been going on for 2 years now. But
I thought she was more Issey Miyake influenced on the summer collection, to be honest. But that's fine because it's something in the air. Other people are as well.
Yeah, like I thought L'Homme Fan felt really Yohji.
Yeah.
And also going into context, you could say just as far as what she's done in the seasons beforehand, paying dues, where she's done things that have been so progressive or make you see women's clothing in such a different light. So if she does reference something for one season or 2 seasons, and like you said, develops it, what's wrong with that?
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I agree.
I don't think it's not. I think it can still be progressive while referencing. Absolutely.
It's
and I
a
guess she's
respect
at
thing.
that point where she can reference other, because people have enough respect for her. I guess referencing is tricky when it's a designer where you don't feel like that they're at a level where where they have enough of an understanding. Perhaps that sounds very patronising.
Her earlier work really reminded me of like Antwerp and Heider's early work, and Veronique Blanquino, the Ruffo research work, the leather stuff that she did. I don't know.
Because it's all tied to a bigger concept, isn't it? I mean, with the last collection, I can't remember exactly what she said, but I'm sure she was saying, obviously the track was freedom, it was about being liberated, and I think almost about being liberated from the codes of the house in a way as well. So as long as the things that she's referencing, the people she's referencing, if they fit in with that, as part of that kind of jigsaw puzzle, then it does make sense. Yeah, the only thing is when it's weird is when someone kind of creates an homage collection or entirely rips off.
But we are very precious about
look.
it in fashion. It's one of those things where I think no one quite gets what's... It's on my mind a lot at the moment, especially because all these conversations we've been having about heritage houses and the way that, you expect people to... a designer going into a heritage house to sort of really understand the core codes of that house, but then somewhat kind of ignore all the modern designers that have been there between. So I was thinking about like Dior with Raf, for example, that everyone expects him to do the bar jacket and the new look, but then why can't he be looking also at Galliano?
Plus, of course, they're pumping out so many collections now. That's what's so astonishing. I mean, obviously, we're just talking about the key collections, but you've got all the pre-fall and resort collections and things like that. That if there's a lot of material there, isn't there? You've got to push out.
Taking things in a slightly different tack, I want to talk a little bit about the way sort of Phoebe is perceived broadly, because we've talked a lot about how sort of acclaimed and how respected she is within the fashion industry, but I think there's a really weird thing with what she's done at Celine where it's become cult almost across kind of all of culture. And I want to talk a little bit about music, because I know it's a really old thing when Kanye wore the woman's Celine shirt, but if you look at the kind of people who reference her, whether it's in a song, whether it's that they come to her shows, and it got me thinking about kind of style icons and the way people dress, because if you watch like an old music video from like the 90s, especially someone like of Kanye's ilk is wearing like sportswear, he's wearing like Nike or something, whereas now they're wearing Celine, and I'm interested in why she's caught so many people's attention in that way as well, like why it's now cool across culture rather than just in fashion, and if that's just to do with sort of the sort of musicians and fashion becoming closer together. But why is Phoebe caught people's attention so much?
And the broader reach of fashion now.
Yeah, exactly.
I think fashion, rather than this kind of biannual showcase and then the rest of the year it's behind closed doors in its ivory towers, even though Phoebe doesn't like the digital, doesn't like it, but she doesn't court the digital thing, I think it's exposed to a much wider audience. So that could influence it.
But why is she so popular with kind of...
I think it's name dropping. It's name dropping. I think Phoebe Philo is such an insider's name, and I think from I don't know, that's it's just I mean the same with Margiela. I thought it was quite far-fetched when Kanye all of a sudden started showing up at Margiela shows, but because I didn't connect the two. I didn't connect Kanye's culture with Margiela, the dry white jackets.
But it's not just Kanye. If you saw like A$AP Rocky was at everything,
the
menswear, and there's a real kind of intimate, but it does, as you say, it tends to be with those the difficult brands, the name drop. So it's Raf Simons or Margiela or Celine, and I'm just interested in why she's captured so many people's attention.
I think for those kinds of artists, there's a wanting to separate themselves from the pack, and the pack used to mean bling in a way, didn't it? And so this is like a definite departure. And like you say, it's a little bit more insider. I mean, maybe not everybody does know who Margiela is and Phoebe Philo, as in the average person on the street. So I think. Yeah, it's a good way to kind of show that you've got a bit more fashion now, so you've got the kind of slightly stronger credentials, you think?
Or even if you just think, just from a gender standpoint, if you're a guy, right, and you're out in London or a major city, and you're at a bar or a restaurant, and just see a woman there, and they all kind of dress the same. You have some who are wearing, I don't know, Dolce & Gabbana, this and that, third, then a girl walks in with like this huge overcoat that looks like it could be her dad's, but it's not, because it's like blue or something like that. It's just going to stand out to you, and that's going to draw you in. And I think that's the thing for like those guys, whether it's Kanye or whoever or me, anyone, that kind of like turn the knob. And then, so then you have the conversation with this girl. You say, oh yeah, this is Celine. And then the next time you go to Dover Street and you go look at Celine, you're like, wow, look at this shirt. Kind of looks like Versace, but it's not. It's more toned down, but it's still kind of flamboyant. And it's so, the largest women's size kind of fits me. Oh, let me try this. You know, and I think it just happened that it wasn't that contrived, you know? And then it became a whole thing, and he wore it at Coachella, and he name dropped on the first song of My Beautiful Dark Fantasy, and then, you know, it brought loads of people who are tuned into what he does into what she does, you know? I think that's beautiful, you know?
You think
I think comes from a real place. Yeah, I don't think
it's
it's that deep, you know, and then, you know, part of it is like, you know, I'm pretty sure, because I saw Virgil was wearing that shirt too, like in interviews I've seen him wearing it, so maybe Virgil put Ye onto it, I don't know. But I think, it came from a pretty real place. But then, if you're talking about that culture, just, you know, people who aspire, whether it's like someone in middle America or somewhere in Harlem, who are aspiring to high-end stuff, the typical stuff is Versace, this, that, Gucci. So then, if you're really into it, and you're really tuned into it, and you really live it, okay, what's that thing that's sidesteps Versace? And it is Celine, Margiela, and those things.
Because it's kind of
like,
quiet
goes
luxury,
back to what
isn't
you
it?
said.
Yeah.
So it's status then.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Part of the status.
Informed.
Exactly, informed.
Yeah.
Because
I
it kind of,
we know, you don't know.
Not just,
and
not
yeah,
just like
because of it.
what you heard someone talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there was the bling factor, and then of course there was the kind of very obvious machismo with some of those other labels as well.
For sure.
So I think, something like Celine is sidestepping that for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've seen a bit this season, you know, even like with the Tom Ford thing, referencing the sort of the tops that Jay-Z wears of his, and it just feels like this very interesting, the kind of brands that are being sort of pulled up in those kind of like music contexts. They're not showy, cool brands. You know, Tom Ford, Celine. It's kind of different. Celine. It's different. And it just got me thinking about what makes something kind of cool and what makes something. And maybe it is that quiet luxury thing that we talked about, you know, with Margiela and
sort of
Celine.
stealth wealth in a way,
definitely.
a little bit, because it's basically showing your credentials, and not just because everybody knows how much money they've got, so therefore it's not really enough to just go out and buy things that are very flashy and have got logos over them. The way to actually show that you've got some credibility is to actually show that you know what's what, you know what the fashion insiders would be wearing. Do you know what I mean?
And then another thing too, I think it's just something with people who are really into style, fashion, whatever, art, whatever, because of like the internet, everything's so accessible. Now there's literally only 3 things you could do: is wear something obscure, or vintage, or you made yourself. That's what my friend Eastside said, and he's right.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
so
like those 3 things, because everything else is just like, you know, Saint Laurent comes out and then you'll see 1 million people in it, whether they can afford it or not, just because it's so dialed into culture.
So it's like obscurity, I guess, has become the ultimate luxury, and that's interesting.
That's the ultimate luxury, something that's obscure.
And it's hard to get, Celine. I think it's worth saying, you know, that the retailers that stock them aren't allowed to sell them online. They have to keep them in the store, and I think the way they kind of work with that is really interesting with Celine. It's very kind of, does that make us want things more? Do you find that, Karl, if you can't get something,
thrill of the chase,
you want it more? Yeah, playing hard to get.
I don't know really. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I find that the idea of Kanye and people like that wearing Celine, I think it's great. I think it's cool and everything. And I think that it's a different thing. You can't look at it the same as you look at Saint Laurent or whatever, a brand that does like women's and men's and blah blah blah. But the fact that Celine becomes a status symbol for men, I find quite interesting. I have to say, and maybe there's a bag in there for me, or I don't know, we'll see. I'll have a look. But you know how I feel about Saint Laurent, so don't even go there. It's just bankrupting me. The shop was open on Sloane Street a minute ago. On my way here, I was like, no, right?
No, but I guess it's an interesting point. This idea of women's wear as a status symbol for men, I do find that interesting.
I do. I mean, it's kind of cross-dressing,
yeah,
but in a kind of very cool contemporary way.
Yeah, completely.
Why not? You know,
and maybe
good on Kanye. I'm sure he's worn a bit of Givenchy women's wear as well.
Yeah, and I guess you see it with luggage as well. You see the amount of it's an interesting. I guess, but I'm just trying to work out why. Yeah, they'd rather wear luxury women's wear than something.
Because there's no menswear designer doing that cool Moroccan print top. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes you want something that's not, you know, the norm.
I think it's about, being really, if we're really candid about it, having really good people working with them as well.
Yeah.
That will say, not that they can't do it themselves, but they would suggest this is a really cool brand and blah, blah, blah. I think that's part of it. Obviously these aren't people that just roam solo. They've got other things to do, make albums and, work with Zaha Hadid and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He's not just roaming Celine looking for
exactly. You can't shop all day.
Do we all agree with that though, this idea that Tremaine and I were kind of discussing that something being obscure and difficult to access is kind of the ultimate in luxury? Because we see that with so many brands that they're hard to get now. That seems to be like the new thing, making yourself
I think
difficult.
if you're very busy and kind of famous or whatever, I think trawling around vintage shops is quite a full-time occupation. So unless you've got people doing it for you, like probably Kate Moss has, or what I mean, I think that's quite hard to do. So I think you find the obscurity in what's available, sort of commercially, maybe, and then
And I like what I heard about Comme des Garçons, that they for press they refuse to give clothes to editorials mixed with other designers. And I'm not just talking about a page. The entire feature needs to be about Comme des Garçons.
But I kind of hate
in order to shoot
I kind of hate that too.
That's a new
Because we were
rule.
just
it
saying
limits creativity for the stylist.
I remember years ago, Margiela, as a stylist, you could only shoot it with the Japanese, the shoe, and it was kind of hard. We always wanted to put it with like
The
Converse.
tabi shoe. With
I wanted to say the pig shoe, but I'm not going to say that. But it was like, that was when he was there, and it was very. I mean, I kind of get it, and I don't. Do you know what I mean? Because you're kind of trying to show as a stylist how you're reappropriating stuff.
Because
so,
surely that totally suffocates your
and it
creativity.
looks really weird in a shoot with other, at that point it would have been everyone else in battered old Converse,
And the
Which
other
has come
thing,
round again.
And actually, the other thing as well is it actually can make things look like an advertorial. Times, and I
So many
totally get
shoots
why they
today
want to have that control, but I think you have to relinquish some kind of control and let other people interpret it and express it if you're solid enough in what you've got.
Has that got a lot worse, the shoot the full look thing?
Well, I mean, shoot the full. I mean, there's certain designers you've got to be careful with, but you shouldn't have to put the shoes with it as well, or the back. You know what I mean? That's going too far. I mean, it's a bit of a minefield.
Isn't Celine the same?
Celine is the same full look. I think the thing
But
is
she
also,
wouldn't probably mind if you didn't do the shoe, I'm sure.
I don't know.
But then you think
That's not
is
real.
that
I mean, sometimes a
freedom?
stylist does a shoot. I know stylists who like to do the whole shoot with the same shoe going the whole way through it, which is like, why not?
Yeah.
But I just think that if it's suddenly this thing where it just looks like a runway look, that's not great. That's not great for the brand.
And adapting it into everyday life. Katie, one of the first things you said was if you wear Celine, or maybe it was you, Tremaine, you have to have style and be a stylish woman. Now, taking an off-the-peg catwalk look, it's not really, I mean, yes,
really
there's a certain
style.
swagger that stylish women have, or a certain way that they might tuck in their shirt or roll up a sleeve. But really, I think it's interesting to see how Celine women mix that up.
That's the great thing about Celine is it works probably one of the best brands is separates.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
And from a brand perspective, I mean, what's the point of, for any of us sitting here, anyone on the street, you can now, especially now, you can see the shows so easily. You can see the full looks in the shows. They get beamed across Instagram and social media just like that. To then just have that replicated in a fashion editorial, what's the point? I mean,
That's a really
I feel
smart
a little bit cheated actually to buy a magazine, and especially having a great stylist and a great photographer and team. Replicated, why bother? I don't really.
And it becomes like a trend page.
And then logistically, like, who can really? Besides, like 1% of people on Earth can afford the whole look.
I think
you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
It's not the most uncool thing in the world to wear a whole look. I'm so,
But it does a disservice to the viewer. I think that's a really good point, or the reader, because you think that if they're going to save up and buy some Celine, they'll save up and they'll buy one piece, and they want information about how to wear that. They don't just want to see it with the rest of the Celine. I think it's.
And I think there is a lot of protection going on about the brand of Celine. I mean, when you go to Karl Otto for the press day, that's the one brand you're not allowed to photograph anything. I mean, I get it. I get that. I mean,
They're worried about the copying thing, aren't they? Because they're one of the most copied brands ever, I think.
Yeah. But it's kind of a bit late by that point because the show happened like a month
You can't stop
before.
it now. You
Yeah.
can't stop that.
I mean, people can copy the buttons, the bags, whatever they want. But I do understand it, but I don't understand this. I don't understand having to shoot whole looks.
And it completely like eradicates the role of a PR.
Yeah.
I'm
like,
don't do
I'm going to have to start
celebrity
sketching
dresses.
things again.
It's like, no.
I used to go to the shows and sketch every look, and like I kind of forgotten how to sketch. I can't even write my name anymore because I don't have it right. And so suddenly I'm like in like a press office going, okay, am I going to remember this?
Yeah.
But it's kind of quite good. It's like, kind of brings you back to basics, I guess.
But this is a whole bigger conversation. I'm conscious that I do really want to see the show, but I'm interested in this conversation of control in fashion, because especially because we have a digital expert with us, because it seems to be the more fashion becomes open, obviously because of online and people being able to tweet from the shows, Instagram and stuff, there's this other branch of trying to control stuff, which seems really perverse and bizarre, because you can't. I sometimes wonder if we're going to go to a show once and have a kind of Tom Ford thing of like no pictures. You can't take
And he's
it.
stopped doing that now.
Yeah, he has stopped doing it because it's impossible. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Does it?
Well, actually, it is possible with the pre-collection, as I discovered last night when I was like, I'll go find out what she did for the pre-collection. Nothing is available online except for a few sentences from WWD. They have managed to completely block all looks coming out until it hits retail.
But what happened with Celine's pre-collection? Does it?
No, that is
Did they
that
do
is
it?
Celine.
that is
yeah.
the Celine
Oh.
pre-collection.
They just
Yeah,
stopped
it's
it
not
being
available.
able to be viewable.
So it does exist, but it's just not on star.com.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just can't see it.
I mean, do you think this is mainly linked to the retailers like Zara and stuff? When
Yeah.
they're doing
I think
this?
so.
And
Yeah,
how
definitely.
quick they can get the
Yeah.
stuff in the stores, you know?
And I think
Because
it
you can
must
buy Celine and Zara now.
You
Like
pretty
they've got
much-
all the
like
paint.
it's
But
within
you-
2
yeah,
weeks.
it's
Do you know what?
completely
On one
crazy.
hand, I think it's terrible. I mean, it's been dubbed devastating fashion, hasn't it, before? And that's pretty
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, the people who are actually going to buy Celine, they're making it so covetable. If you can afford to buy Celine, you're going to buy the Celine.
Yeah.
The people that are buying the Zara stuff probably aren't going to.
But I guess it's
Like
the
the
problem that it
Salon,
makes
yeah.
something less covetable. Like, with those, like all that stellar sort of checks. And by
Yeah.
the time that came out, that just didn't feel cool or luxurious anymore, because just that seeing those kind of checks everywhere, it really
Yeah,
sort
I
of-
think generally you're right, although I think there are times when it actually really elevates the designer version
Yeah.
anyway, because when there are that many copycats of something, people really hanker after the real thing.
The real thing.
So I think it can work both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be really pissed off as well.
But
to have it
you don't
copycatted,
want to buy
but-
Celine though, and someone goes, "Oh, that's nice, Zara. I saw that."
Yeah.
as well."
But isn't it a
Yeah.
fabric? Isn't it a
Awful.
fabric
Yeah,
thing?
like with Saint
I mean,
Laurent.
isn't Celine really hard to copy? I
Yeah.
would imagine.
Well, this is a good point. I want to talk about that as well, because it feels like so many brands are now deliberately designing stuff not just for aesthetic beauty, but for this is going to be impossible to copy.
Yeah.
And then doing things whether it's. I
That's
think
the problem
maybe
with
what
the
was
signature print it's now signature print that Celine did last season, because that's the only thing that's copyable, because their
Yeah,
finishing
exactly.
is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
So that was quite risky, also fun.
I mean, even to do
Yeah.
the edge of the skirt would be a cost that would probably
Yeah.
get dropped along the way, you know?
We did that at Matthew Williamson. This all of our prints became hand drawn, and then like this skirt, it's all hand beaded, hand dyed, hand cut. It takes 6 hours to make 10 centimeters of it. Things like that aren't copyable, and I think that comes up with the Saint Laurent thing too. I remember
that's
we
easier
discussed
to
this.
copy.
It is easy to copy, but then you go in store and you see the difference
And how
in the
beautiful
couture
it is.
level
Yeah.
of detailing and craft, and that's why the customer who can afford it would still buy it.
Still buy it.
Yeah, because in some ways, if there are kids that are going to go into like River Island or copying or Topshop and copying that, buying that stuff, it's kind of just fueling the sort of cult status of some of these brands anyway, I think. I mean, definitely something with Saint Laurent, because there was so much controversy about it when the show actually came out. Then all of a sudden you've got this new young generation of customers that are hankering after it wherever they can get it. So just buying into a bit of it, maybe they'll buy one bit of it.
Do you think they know that it's Saint Laurent? 'Cause
Yeah, definitely. I do now, just because I think we can see this stuff sort of beamed out on social media everywhere.
Yeah,
But I think they're much more aware than I would
like,
have been when I was
girlfriends
young.
that will buy the Zara Celine top because they like the print and they think it's colourful and pretty,
Yeah,
and they will
same.
have no idea that it's Celine. They just like
Yeah.
it.
I think with Celine, maybe I think Saint Laurent's slightly different.
Slightly different.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah,
I think.
that's interesting.
I think also just on the digital thing for Celine, it comes from the top, it comes from Phoebe. She said she'd rather walk down the street naked than be on Facebook. She said the chicest thing ever is not to be on Google. It's not up her street, and I think a brand's digital perspective, if it's going to be, isn't a great quote. If it's going to be authentic, it's got to come from the creative force at the top,
Is
and
that
whatever they
sustainable
feel
though, trying to stay
comfortable about.
offline?
Yeah, do you know, I was thinking about this, and it's funny because they're offline, but then they do have like quite a lot of outlet stores for Celine.
Yeah.
So you go to like Bicester Village.
Oh, do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah,
They do.
so they are. So so they are.
I've got to tell
cultivating
Hedy to
it.
do a Bicester Village as well.
Yeah, Mr. Village,
Yeah.
the unsung hero of fashion.
Who knew we'd be promoting
That's
that?
something
But that's a true point, though.
You
How many
quoted that
outlet
on
stores?
Twitter.
Yeah, please don't write that. Sorry, what are you saying, Katie?
I don't know.
What time's the Paddington trip?
But it's true, you think, I do find their sort of frostiness to online sale quite interesting, because I guess maybe it's just on a simplistic level, maybe it's just another way of her differentiating her brand from others and saying, you know, like, you can buy me from Matches, but you can't buy me on matchesfashion.com. Maybe it's that
because in a way it's kind of like saying if you want to come and buy it, then you've got to actually come and see it and feel it and touch it and experience it.
It is the textile quality about Celine and the finishing, like the inside is much more.
Come and see it. If you appreciate it, then you'll understand why it's worth spending the money on it. I think that's probably part of
really
part of doing.
I really hope and wish that they do start to build an online presence, though, because if I could just imagine it. I think it would be so authentic.
But can you imagine a tweet from Celine? She's too chic
No,
to tweet. What would it say?
I think maybe maybe not
But even just
A little
a
pithy
website,
pun.
because is it just me, or has the website complete, like, it just keeps saying it's broken, it's broken?
It's just not coming back, I think.
Yeah. So even just a website, like with HTML5, that it's amazing what you can do nowadays online and how you can replicate a luxury in-store experience.
Yeah.
So not necessarily, you know, a Maxim style tweet.
There's a lot of ways to there's a lot of ways to execute digital now that aren't necessarily about just being on Twitter.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Why are you giggling?
I was just imagining like Phoebe's selfies, what they'd be.
That's what I think.
Should we do nail ones?
Oh,
If I get
yeah, can you just
Wearing a chunky heel.
hashtag chunky heel. Yeah, you can't see it happening. But it's interesting because I worry when a brand becomes so cool, so polished and so exclusive that you think, you know, there's going to come a time where they're going to have to go online. And I feel like the brands that have spent time maybe making a few mistakes but cultivating their voice already are going to find that a lot easier. Imagine, you know, she's left it so long now. It's like Christopher Kane almost with the lack of online thing. It's like everyone's waiting for it. And when it happens, I think he has to
be good.
Yeah, they have to be so good. With other brands that kind of ease their way in, they've probably made a few mistakes, but they kind of get it now. They're doing okay. And I don't know. Do you think it's sustainable?
Maybe she's
staying
Go ahead.
offline.
Yeah.
I think the appetite, it's difficult because at the moment there is such an appetite to find them and for people searching them, and I feel they might be missing a trick through not having that. But I mean, then again, it's not like it's a requirement through online for sales, because their sales are skyrocketing.
Yeah.
But just to get that,
Pulling in new customers. And
get that brand message out there. I think in the few times Phoebe is interviewed, she is so eloquent. She's fascinating. It feels like a lost outlet, maybe.
What were you going to say to me?
No, but maybe that's a thing, you know, because of the status of the brand and her, she's gonna, as we all stated, like, the brand's totally tied into her. So if she's saying things like, I'd rather walk down the street naked than be on Facebook, or, you know, not being on Google's Chic. So while she has the power with, you know, the board of directors of LVMH, where she can do it the way she wants to do it, she's gonna stretch that as long as she can. You know, maybe that's just, you know, just like you, like nowadays. I know I always relate things to music because it's my favorite thing. But like, you have artists who like
Fashion isn't your favourite thing?
music. No, music.
Tremaine.
Get
Music.
off the panel.
But you know, you have artists who come out and they're out for 2 years and they have a Shine record deal because they're making loads of money on the road.
And they get to do it their own way.
And they get to put the music 100% their way. So I feel like in a way she's doing the same thing. Like, she's getting to do it her way. They're making money and she's gonna enjoy it as long as she can.
Yeah.
And maybe she's wrong, and maybe the thing she's, like you said, she might be missing the trick by not doing things digital, Instagram, Twitter, this and the third. But for her, she's gonna maybe ride that wave as long as she can.
Sort of integrity and personal sort of strength of character, knowing what you're about, that's the biggest thing to succeed as a fashion
And then also, I think a part of it is her not, maybe, it might seem like she's taking fashion too serious, but maybe it's her not taking it that serious. So where it's not like a kayak need, so she's not treating it like well, I have to get this out to many people as possible. Yeah. She knows this clothing she's selling is selling to a small group of people in the world.
And
so
that's
what's
luxury,
really
isn't it?
luxury. So what's the need to really put it digital?
Plus, I think there's a lot of brands that make the mistake of basically, because we're so early, it's kind of the infancy still of digital strategies. They get onto everything, so they're like, shit, we've got to be on Twitter, we've got to be on Instagram, we've got to be on Snapchat, like God knows what. And actually, it might be. we'll talk about it later.
Something else.
You look like Pisces of face when you're on these pages.
So she might. Seriously, so it might actually be that there's going to be a channel that's better for her. Maybe they'll devise something. I mean, we're literally at the tip of the iceberg of what's going to be possible. I'm sure Rosanna would say
how you need to tailor your strategy for each platform, and don't go onto platforms that aren't
Just
right for you. For example, if Twitter wasn't right for her, don't do that one. There would probably be one that was. I think a big reason that they might decide to start doing their own digital output is it means that they can start to influence the digital noise with something which has integrity from them and tell their own story, rather than it just being this kind of teen dominated.
That's interesting.
It might be some kind of virtual journal that they'll create or something like that. Something where you get to understand her references and these because if she's really big on showing visual references, I mean, obviously digital's a great platform.
I'd love to see
show
a
your
Celine.
visual
We used to have Acne paper, and even it's a completely different price point and level. But Whistles do their kind of almost like their inspiration section. And I can imagine for Celine doing something that felt a little more edited, since it's about such kind of cool women. If they did something that felt
but it's also about rich women. I don't think Celine is as cool as the Chloe girl, for instance, because I think the Chloe girl was a lot younger than the Celine woman.
And was the price point more achievable, maybe?
Slightly, but
slightly not. Massive.
Well, that's all changed.
But that's because Chloe is also really expensive.
An it bag for weren't Paddingtons like 700?
Yeah, Paddingtons were like 750, 800.
And now it's double that.
Do you remember when everyone got repetitive strain in their arms and carrying them? Do you remember that? There was like a year where all the coolest girls in the world had like a broken arm from carrying the Paddington. It was absolutely amazing. Should we look at what she's done this year?
Nice segue.
It's true, honestly, look it up. Look up Misha Barton,
but
repetitive
what is that
strain.
whole woman's thing about
when was
wearing
that
a
period
bag
where everyone started carrying the bag like that? And also, it's meant to make you look skinnier because it's all big in front of you.
Yeah, it's probably a silhouette thing, a bit thinner. Yeah.
How should a chic woman hold her bag?
Someone else should hold it.
I knew you were going to say that.
The driver.
The porter. Bring back porters.
Right.
But that's very now as well, to find creative ways how to hold your bag. And I think Celine started that anyway. I mean, they had the most insane ways of holding. Margiela had some
Celine did that
interesting
whole
construction.
Clutch it and kind of hold.
Yeah, but did you see the Margiela one where someone was holding a bag and the handle was somewhere? It's true.
But I think it's seen as quite chic, isn't it? Anyway, let's look at the collection. Sorry, can we see the first look again? Because we were all distracted.
Interestingly, no bags.
No bags. First one I see.
Because she has a porter this season.
Yeah, she's got a porter following behind.
Wow.
Is this what we were expecting, just based on those first three?
Buttons.
No.
I think I need to wear glasses.
I'm quite surprised so far.
Well, it's a palette cleanser.
Yeah.
It was the hemline I was expecting, I think.
It's very... I'm a bit obsessed with the clavicle, which is a very weird thing to be obsessed with, but this kind of off-the-shoulder, sort of falling off you Prada thing, it just seems to completely come through everywhere, doesn't it?
J.W. Anderson we saw quite a bit of that.
Yeah, a lot of that. Those shoes in number 9 are amazing. But very Prada, again, with that big zip at the front and really chunky,
But isn't it funny that you can imagine her wearing all of this?
Yeah.
And it's like when you see the ads that Jürgen shoots, and it's like, you can't tell whether it's Phoebe or Daria. They look exactly the same.
But I kind of love designers that design for
I think that's such a clever thing.
What are you thinking, Maarten? You're kind of rocking back and forth.
Yeah, my eyesight is really bad, so I'm just trying to...
My eyesight's terrible.
I was like, is Maarten okay?
It's just like, because I'm really enjoying this mix between draping and tailoring, which I think Raf Simons was really good with Dior, and I get this like Peter Lindbergh feeling of like lately with the collections gone now. It's all grey and warm and cozy, but still like funky.
It's kind of blowing in the wind slightly.
I don't know. It's really great. It's very. I don't know. It feels very Yoji.
It's interesting, this kind of bootleg knit flare type thing with the tunic. We saw that at Marc Jacobs as well. that kind of goes back to that difficult to copy thing. You can see that looking absolutely horrible on the high street.
Because it requires a certain amount of a perfect fabric and perfect
really
tailoring
great
to pull it
fabric.
off. Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like this feels a little more of that kind of Chloe sexiness, you know, the clothes slightly falling off her.
And the slits and
the slits and the...
Yeah, it's quite artfully dishevelled, isn't it? Although
Yeah.
the first three looks confused me a little bit, to be honest.
Because
Because
they were
the
more
first three looks
buttoned.
felt quite austere.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually,
Very
quite
long.
retro, quite austere, and then
It's always interesting to see how things look
23.
static and how things look walking. Because
Yeah.
I know that in Paris particularly, the silhouette all comes to life in the fitting through the walk, not by being stood by a wall.
Do we know what the music is by any chance?
No, I don't think we do.
It's by Michel.
Oh, he just did the music for it. Okay.
Should we guess?
I think
That little camel top in 27 reminds me of her first collection.
Yeah, but that she owns
Just love
Camel,
it.
doesn't
Yeah,
she?
that little tucked in, perfectly fitting, almost a body. But it's actually a dress underneath the skirt, I think.
Yeah,
isn't it?
there's kind of a tunic dress.
why is everyone doing such long jackets, coats this season?
I think it's that statement coat thing. We've talked about this loads, that people want a really like great coat.
Yeah.
More than you know, people used to buy a coat to wear with their fashion. It was
Well, I'd
black
love a
coat,
great
go
coat.
with
I just
everything.
don't understand why it's so heavy and large and long.
I love this little flash of yellow fur throughout.
Yeah, it's really
really sweet.
beautiful. I actually prefer this to last season.
See, I think that
it's-
the women I know who wear Celine will find this much easier than last season.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And this doesn't feel as I think last season was it was so beautiful and so striking that it was almost a kind of, it'll go down in history as that season of Celine, whereas this feels a little bit more, as you said, Karl, if you wore Celine, you could slot this in with your other Celine pieces, and you're it's a bit less seasonal.
You've got this almost like ever so slightly sort of nautical, whether it's with the buttons or the high trousers, the high-waisted trousers, or...
I really like the kind of dishevelled nature of
Me
it.
too.
Because
It's like we were saying at the beginning about the London girl. That is exactly how she dresses, always a little bit undone.
yeah.
Although some of it's dishevelled, some of it... I mean, when I think of Phoebe Philo dishevelled, I think of like lower trousers, like trousers pooling a little bit at the bottom, so you can kind of have your hands in them. This for me feels a little bit more, I don't know, it's a bit primmer in some ways, dare I say it. Don't think that's quite the word I want, actually. I'm still
A bit
searching
more
for
lady,
what I
it's like
want.
dishevelled ladylike.
Yeah, not. I don't see it as dishevelled cool in quite the same way. Well, not these looks, certainly.
But do you not think it's a strength in her sort of fabrications and her finishes and her techniques that she can do something that does look kind of easy and slouchy and dishevelled, as we all keep saying? Because the pieces themselves will be so expensive that you're never actually going to look sort of thrown together.
Yeah, but we have to
Yeah.
see it walking for that, because
Yeah.
from the
I agree.
photos it looks very heavy, and I
Yeah.
doubt that it's as heavy
Yeah.
as it looks. You know, looks very heavy.
Yeah.
It does feel very, very Prada to me.
The
Maybe it's
shoes,
just the
number 41.
footwear, but and the gingham.
It's so refreshing. I love the way all of that could be worn in the evening, but there is never in a Celine show that kind of last 10 looks,
Out
cocktail
of this
wear.
world
Yeah.
looks.
Yeah, or
Where
like
you
the
going?
showpiece. This is what we want to be dressing girls on the red carpet in. But all of it would work for that.
I love that really broad kind of grungy cuff. You know, like when you have your school jumper and you keep pulling
Yeah.
it down, and then you
Yeah.
eventually poke your thumb through it. It
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
feels like.
See, that's when the dishevelled really works,
Yeah.
I think, even on this.
God, that's so Yoshi.
Yeah, it's incredibly kind of Japanese. You really see that. in
Yeah,
this,
and you
don't
see some Junior and some Com references. You know, all the buttons and the twisted tailoring around
Yeah,
the
the
body.
twist I think is
Yeah.
really.
Look at the bell bottoms there.
I think this shape though, this triangular shape that we're seeing on that jacket in number 4, on the hem of number 3, and even just in the shape of that bag, that kind of triangular flowing shape, that's quite interesting for her, because I think with Celine you associate it with being a bit more structured. I know
Structured.
last season wasn't, but
Yeah.
you do think of that. This does remind me of the clothes. Maybe it's the wooden shoes.
Yeah,
and the
the
kind of
shoes
slightly.
The clunky heel.
Yeah,
the
the
I
chunky heel.
love the shoes.
Well, I guess you have to put a clumpy shoe with it, otherwise it could look very lady.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of.
It could look prim.
There's
like you
nowhere
were
else to
saying,
go with the
Katie.
shoe.
But it's interesting what Tremaine was saying with kind of a girl wearing a coat that could be her dad, but she couldn't because it's so beautiful and bright blue. And there's an element of this where it's incredibly modern, but it could all be kind of that thing of a girl just picked out stuff that she found in her like grandma's closet or vintage.
Yeah.
I think that's always feels really authentic, and that's very different to Celine. You know, Celine always feels incredibly modern, but there's an element of nostalgia, I think, to this.
Yeah, definitely.
The fur looks
Especially
a bit
those first
nostalgic,
coats,
actually.
those first coats and stuff. Quite nostalgic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, fair, as you say. There's something
Because
incredibly...
that's like a fur muff going on there,
Yeah.
which isn't the way usually we've been seeing fur around kind of the collars or as a big statement fur coat.
Yeah, there's certainly a bit of sort of grandma eclecticism coming
Yeah,
in with
it's
this that
very
quite
eclectic.
surprises me, actually.
That's beautiful, number 12. I kind of love that, where it looks like you've just emerged from sort of the bottom of the sea. And
The texture on that would be amazing.
yeah, absolutely amazing. But that's so striking. It goes back to what Tremaine was saying, which is, you know, you have to have an incredible amount of confidence and style to wear that and not look like a little bit bonkers. Do you like it, Maarten?
Yeah, I don't know yet. Really. No, I'm just happy that she doesn't do those big sleeves that we saw in New York and at Balenciaga, because I was worried that was gonna stay. You know.
Well, the volume's in a very different place to what we're seeing everywhere. Everywhere else we're seeing kind of those
'cause
sportswear shapes. It's
and
all
it
up
felt
here,
really
the volume is-
dated. It just feels so dated, and I almost want to say that it can only be men that design that. You know, like those big rounded things
Yeah.
that no one wears.
Yeah. The thing that most women hate is looking bulky and looking like their shoulders look broad. So
Yeah,
to
but it's
see
also like, it's so like 2-3 years ago that was cool. I don't understand why we still see it on catwalks. I know, so it's a bit more realistic, and I like the whole.
I think it feels very real.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wish Chloe was better. I miss because I was such a big fan of Chloe,
Yeah,
and
I
when you
loved
see
her.
this, you're like,
Yeah.
oh god, there's so much potential there.
What would you like to see happen at Chloe? Different designer?
Yeah, personally,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And would you like to see it go back to that kind of bohemian girl running through a field?
We mean the Chloe girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I even preferred Karl Lagerfeld's Chloe girl over what's happening now. I don't get it. But yeah.
But do you think this is very Celine? This is the Celine woman? Will the Celine woman be happy?
Yeah, I just feel like I think old Celine collections were very much limited to a certain kind of woman that could wear it. You know, not every woman could pull it off, and I'm thinking like Italian, Spanish, German. Like I thought it was very much focused on almost a Jill Sander woman, and I feel
It's
like
much more business, working women.
and last season it was very. I felt it was a bit more French, which I thought was really exciting. And when you see this, a lot of women can wear this,
Yeah.
whether you're Italian, German, French, or American. Like it appeals to a lot of markets, and also that length, it really appeals to a lot of markets.
I think that's interesting with the global nature, because you've got that kind of American sportswear thing with those shapes that were similar to what we saw at Marc Jacobs, you know, the longer knit, and then you've got number 26 that we just, or even these coats here, you know, that kind of, actually, can you go to number 26, the camel coat? It's that kind of working woman thing, but then you've also got that kind of grungier thing that will fit much better with a kind of fashion girl. So there is a
It's like
diversity.
a fur belt.
to it. I kind of love the fur
Yeah,
belt.
it's amazing.
I particularly like that look. I think in terms of the practicality, it ticks a lot of those boxes. I do wonder though if, and yeah, I'll probably change my mind about this by the time I'm home, but it feels quite old. I mean, certainly for me looking at this, compared to the sort of excitement I had at the last season and that sort of sense of liberation I had,
Yeah.
this to me doesn't feel, because I was expecting that this season, you know, there's a lot of talk of it becoming a bit more humanised and that she'd sort of liberated herself a little bit from what she'd established before. This feels a little bit buttoned up again to me. And yeah, I'm actually not sure what I think.
But it's also comparing it to because I thought Dior was incredible this
Yeah,
week.
me too.
So
Yeah,
I'm now
maybe.
comparing everything to
Yeah.
Dior, and maybe that's unfair for Phoebe.
I mean, I very much like the ones with the clavicle showing, you know,
Yeah, the
things.
start.
And for me, because I like that sort of dishevelled thing, I like that sort of quite sexy but cool, but not trying too hard. And I think those work really well. Some of the really long coats that are really buttoned up and a little bit verging on shapeless, I just don't know if will resonate with a Celine woman or if it's great.
Or
I'm
if
not
it would
sure.
make
I'm just not
the young girl who loves Celine feel a bit like her mum.
Yeah.
You know, the young girl, like Anna Wintour said, the young girl who wants to find something to wear to work but not look like her mum. The coat,
I think the interesting thing to point out as well is, like, we did touch on this before, and the fact that, you know, everyone says that Phoebe is a female designer, so she kind of gets women, but unless you have a very slim, very beautiful body, to wear something that's kind of falling off you and oversized and off your shoulder and got huge long sleeves, it can be incredibly unflattering unless you're incredibly slender, because then it looks really great and oversized.
Unless you've got the pipe clean and the legs to act as the
like
contrast.
if you look at 15, that's going to be, a lot of people will just look shapeless, like this amorphous lump in that.
How similar is what's on sale to this? I don't know, the stuff that you actually can buy from Celine. How similar is it to this? Is it the same or not? I don't know.
Kind of. If you go in a Celine store, you have. I'm speaking from going into the store in Paris.
Because this feels like quite an exaggerated proportion to me. It doesn't
but
feel
you'll get stuff like this. You do have the kind of consistent Celine pieces that are slightly more kind of like the camels and the blacks and toned down. And I'm sure commercial collection will perhaps be less lumpy.
See, 10 I think would work excellently. I'm sure that silhouette, the trouser silhouette.
That'll probably go straight into
the
separate.
Because that's almost got that masculine and feminine thing that she can do so brilliant.
And also, if you spend so much money, do you really want to look like number 11?
I just want to know.
I mean, everything is so like baggy and hanging.
But I think this is a statement. I think what she's doing here is this doesn't have the aspirational factor that previous Celine collections have had, where one look you're like, I want to look like that. But I think as a proposition for an aesthetic, as a collection as a whole, it's quite seductive. But perhaps previous seasons she's been very good at doing one look that you look at and you're like, oh my god, I want to be that woman. And there's less of that in here, but I think the ethos is equally as seductive as previous collections.
But I do feel this mix of tailoring and draping, what she did last winter, looked more attractive and more expensive.
It doesn't look expensive though, but this goes back to that quiet luxury thing, is I don't know. I guess people do want to look expensive though.
When you look at Dior, you know you're going to pay a fortune for a beautiful coat, but at least it's a beautiful coat.
But even there we were seeing kind of dresses layered over t-shirts. It was bringing it down to a kind of...
But this silhouette was always more flattering, like what we're generally seeing here.
Like what's Kanye going to wear? More importantly,
of course, the yellow fur. That's a good point. The fur muff, definitely.
That is feeling pretty low right now.
But also, I mean, we need to see them moving, because I think with Celine it's so important to hear the music and to see the clothes, how they hang.
It feels very rural. Maybe it's just because I can see all the plants now, but there's an earthiness to it, which I quite like. All those knits, it's quite like...
True,
It's one of these characters, I can't stop thinking of Mary Poppins. I really wish I wasn't.
I know, but I saw that movie last night, Saving Mr. Banks, so I'm like Mary Poppins. It's true, it's very Mary Poppins.
Never thought we'd bring up Mary Poppins in a Celine panel. I'm quite confused.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff I'm going to regret big time after this. But
we don't seem bowled over by it, but maybe that's the beauty of Celine. I think it's because I remember the panel we did last season. It's a similar thing where she always kind of jars you a little bit, and I always mention this quote, but with Miuccia Prada, like its ugliness is kind of good because it's new, and I think, but the thing is with that, it takes you a while to get it, and that's what I always love with Celine, is you look for you keep going back for a couple of weeks, and then
I don't really agree.
You always feel like it will make sense. Do you not agree?
No.
What do you think?
I think, for instance, with Prada, you immediately know that there's something going on. It excites you. There's something going on inside you, but you don't know what it is. And I think with Celine last season, it was, for me personally, it was just incredible. You looked at it, you don't really understand why you like it, which I think is super exciting. I don't have that this season. No.
Yeah, I feel similar. Had a gut instinct with it last time that there was this whole new exciting world of influences that things she was cross-referencing.
And the ease, there was ease to it as well.
They have a Dover, it's great.
And I guess it's that thing where if you don't know why you like it, you still like it. There's still that immediate lust there. But perhaps
as a stylist, I find this a lot easier in a way to imagine working with than last season, because I think, I don't know, there's lots there to choose. There's lots of variety in a way.
Well, it's less iconic, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's always quite a bit of a problem when there's like a really iconic print or jacquard or whatever, and you can't. It's hard to blend it in without it taking over an image or whatever. And I find that there's loads of this because it feels very real to me, and I quite like making people look quite real.
But you can only shoot full looks.
Maybe we'll just have to,
And I like that about the last collection, that I've never seen one collection have so many covers.
Do you think they'd let me put an umbrella with that to do a proper Mary Poppins story?
Dick Van Dyke and I
could do it on the roof.
Right?
Funny.
We'll never work again. None of us.
I know.
Oh, this is not gonna air anyway.
So we're not mad then. That seems to be the impression
Not
we're
yet.
getting. Not yet. Do you think it's a thinker, or do you think it's?
I quite like it.
I really like it.
Yeah,
It's how
no,
I
have to
dress though.
say,
It looks
I
a
do.
bit a bit dishevelled.
I think it's like Michael said, I think it's hard to really sort of judge it by seeing images like this.
With Celine,
Yeah.
you need to see it.
I'm sure it's a whole different story. in
Maybe they're
movement.
walking along to like Belgian techno or something, and that would totally change my perception. I don't
It
know.
made me love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, that I wasn't mad about last season. I just think it looks so fresh. It looks so.
Can we keep looking?
Yeah, can we keep
Yeah.
scrolling? It's got that kind of. I'm not mad on these, but it's number 4. It's where it stops being so prim and those trousers creep in, and then it starts getting kind of
See,
increasingly.
5 I really like.
What did you
5
call
I
these
really
things
like.
Well, I
I've
like
never
the story
had
of
that.
number 1 to number 5 because if you look, it's getting increasingly kind of less buttoned.
Yeah.
If you go back to number 1, sorry, Liam, it's kind of so that's completely simple, very buttoned up, and then it comes slightly less buttoned, and then she adds the cool flower, and then the big grungy trousers get added and the fur, and then it's falling off her.
You see,
I kind of
for-
like that.
For me, the first 3 I just find a bit overwhelming.
Yeah,
I just
and
find them
overworked as
a
well.
bit overworked, a bit overwhelming, a bit dour in mood. And then when it gets to sort of 5 and 6, I love it because I think you've just, again, you've got that J.W. Anderson shoulder coming in. They feel quite powerful, they feel quite intelligent, strong women. And I'm not quite sure where we're going when we get to 7. I'm seeing sort of echoes of last
My
season.
eyesight's so bad. What's going on in number 7? I just can't see what's
Carl, it's
happening.
over. It's
What is
over
it?
now.
That's number 8.
Oh, 8.
It's Celine.
I know, but what is it?
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is what the takeaway from this collection will be. Is it going to be one of the ones where the buyers love it and it sells really well, but the fashion pack don't get it? Or is it going to be sort of, do you think, with a Celine collection, it's always one that the fashion crowd really like.
I think this is one that the customer is going to love. Every girl friend I know who wears Celine would take any of these separates or even full looks. I just don't think it's going to generate that wow moment that last season did, but that's no bad thing, and you couldn't possibly do that every season.
Yeah.
But
What does it suggest for where she's taking the brand though? Because we've talked about how it's slightly less tailored, it's less, it's got less of that kind of structured, immediate sort of looking incredibly expensive sort of vibe to it. Where does it suggest she's looking to move Celine?
I think this woman is more attainable. I think this woman would sit down in her clothes and not worry about them creasing. I think that was something that
think 21 is great.
was a struggle at the beginning.
Yeah, that's true.
It was this unattainable woman that only existed on the catwalk. Whereas I look at Look 22, which is my favourite. I can just see that working on a Sunday, in the workplace. I think it's fantastic.
Working on a Sunday.
Working on a Sunday.
In London.
I love a start on a
Someone
Sunday.
working on a Sunday in London.
No, I meant the look working on a Sunday, not.
Yeah. I love that you have that look in your wardrobe. You're like party, lunch with parents, working on a Sunday.
Of course.
Maarten, what do you think the takeaway is going to be from this collection?
I don't know.
Excellent.
I'm sorry.
If you had to hazard a guess, do you think other people will like it?
Yeah, I'm sure people will love it.
But do you think they like it just because it's Celine? Do you think it's one of those ones where I always think a bit about this with Prada, where whatever she puts out there, people think more because it's Prada. And
I'm
do you
just
think
happy it's not super ugly, because I've seen so many really ugly collections this week, and it really depressed me.
What was the pinnacle of ugliness?
I thought, there was one collection that had like lime green felt dresses, which I thought really topped it for me. Oh, was it? Fiona. Why is that Fiona? Anyway, so yeah, I thought Rochas was also really, just made me really sad.
But you're not feeling too melancholy.
No, it's fine. I thought
You'll
like
survive.
Margiela was quite disappointing for me.
But Margiela, I think it was a kind of similar vibe
Yeah,
to
no,
this.
that's what
It
I
was
wanted to say. I wanted to make that bridge. Thank you.
Got there first. But
Yeah.
talk to me a bit about that, because you said you wanted to make that bridge. What do you think that says about this kind of fashion? What does it say about this season and what people are trying to do?
I don't know. I thought Dior was very much about deconstruction. I don't know. That's how I interpret it. Like I looked at that show 17 times before I kind of could make sense of what was going on. But I don't know. I also see that here. It's not that déshabillé or that disheveled look. I feel it's more like about deconstruction. I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting, but
Well, it gets a lot younger towards the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely
It just feels.
does.
It also
Sure.
feels very American, and I mean for the American market, it feels more like global and more accessible also to people, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else. but
Yeah,
me-
I don't see the cool London girl
Oh, no,
in this.
absolutely
and
not.
that
No.
makes me feel a bit glum
Mm.
as well. So I do feel a little bit melancholy about it.
What's your take on it, Tremaine? Do you think she's a cool girl?
Yeah, she's dope.
In summary.
In summary, no, I think it's great. I mean, I definitely think, example like 40, I need to see that hanging
Yeah.
at a store or something, or if I was at the show or something, you know. I feel like a lot of these pieces, it's hard to get a take on it just from seeing it on the screen. But no, it's beautiful. I think like those coats in the middle section, like the prints, I think those are amazing.
Yeah.
And then those white pieces, I think it was like 13 or something, with the top kind of the tie and then the skirt,
Yeah.
and then the one after that with the kind of fringe. It's amazing. I think it's
Amazing.
really good. I think it's really good. Like I said, I don't think it's, you know, I mean, she set a bar so high. Do I think she's hitting that same bar? No. But do I think it's great? Yeah.
I guess that's, and we can't expect too much of our designers, can we? That's the biggest thing when we put them on a pedestal and kind of tear them down if it's not absolutely incredible every season.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of the pre-fall stuff that I really, really liked. I thought was amazing. Was spot on her. I could see the evolution. I thought it was great. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, we can't see the materials. We can't see how they're moving. And like even watching the Dior show on Friday, that was incredible. And then went home and saw it on Saturday. And the shoes, we didn't even get a look at the
Yeah,
shoes. So
the
there's
trainer
probably like a
shoes.
massive, incredible stuff here that I'm not getting to appreciate. But I feel a bit sad.
This is a tough question, and it's perhaps a kind of unfair one, but what's next for Phoebe Philo, I guess? Because do we always want to see her at Celine? What other house would she fit at? What would happen to Celine without her? Kind of looking to the future, both for her and Celine, what would we see?
The House of Phoebe Philo.
Yeah.
Is that what
I
we
don't
all want?
know.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I don't think she's going to do that. I don't think
No.
that's ever going to happen. There are too many houses that need good creative directors.
Yeah.
There's no room on the schedule as well. There's so many ancient houses that need new people.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Nicolas Ghesquière will happen, like his own label. I don't think Phoebe Philo will happen. Like, we'll find a new label for her.
But well, honestly, I think why does she need to do a label under her name when she's so big and so heralded? That really, I was reading an article the other day that came out like a month ago in New York Times Magazine, and I'm reading, and then Celine came up, and I was like, oh, that's right, it's Celine. You know, like you just think
Yeah.
Phoebe Philo's line is just Phoebe, the brand.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if she needs to do that.
Yeah, I don't know what the added value is of it as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a good, and I think this is what, I guess it goes right back to what we were talking about at the start with this idea that to succeed in fashion, you don't have to be a star in your own right with your own house. Actually, like, for her to have got such acclaim when she's designing under someone else's name is even more credit to her than if she was just getting all the hype just for having a brand under her own name.
Yeah.
So I guess we just want more Phoebe, but more Phoebe at a different house.
Yeah.
Perfect. I just want to go and buy the boots from number 41. That's fine. I'm distracted
Yeah,
by
amazing.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're cool.
amazing. So I'm off to Bicester. Bye.
Road trip.
Thanks, guys. That was
Thank you.
lovely.
Thank you.
Nice
Thanks.
chat.